Well, welcome back, everyone, as we unpack the playbook of another amazing tech whisperer. I shouldn't be surprised, but I find it fascinating how the best digital and technology leaders have a history of what I call answering the call, and on many levels. Today's Tech Whisperers guest is doing so by boldly reimagining how digital services will serve millions of customers and thousands of colleagues in new and differentiating ways. She has answered the call as well by building a dream team of talented leaders that are allowing her to take on significant P&L opportunities. And I know she'll talk about them because she always gives them all the credit. And we may be breaking a little news today as we unpack the story of the always impressive and inspiring Angela Yochem, who has recently taken on new roles at Novant Health. In addition to serving as Executive Vice President and Chief Transformation and Digital Officer, her new titles now include COO and General Manager of Novant Health Enterprises. So Angela Yochem, congratulations on this big news, exciting news, and really appreciate you joining us on the show and opening up your playbook today.
Thank you so much, Dan. It's always a pleasure to chat with you, and I appreciate you taking the time to spend with me today.
Well, we've done this before, always a gift for me to be able to share the stage in any format. And, when Brian Watson and I wrote the book, Confessions of a Successful CIO, Angela, one of the themes was truly answer the call. I mean, the best leaders, it's prevalent in every story. And your career journey is packed with these. And I want to start with what is likely your biggest call that you've answered to date, and that's all around Novant Health Enterprises. So tell us about this new venture and what your role is in that.
Thanks, Dan. First, I should probably describe the core role I have at Novant Health because it's a bit unconventional, and then I'll talk about the new venture and how that fits in. So, as the Chief Transformation and Digital Officer, I'm responsible for all digital health operations, including 24/7 clinical services, a device company, all IT-related functions, our data science, our business growth function that explores new revenue streams for healthcare, our innovation labs, and I'm probably missing some things. And as you mentioned, most recently, I became the general manager and COO for a spinoff that contains many of our ancillary ambulatory services with locations in over a dozen states, our differentiating provider solutions, and some of our more unconventional investment activities. And we're calling this company Novant Health Enterprises. So at NHE, or Novant Health Enterprises, we expect to see continued expansion into the non-acute or non-hospital settings. And I anticipate many more partnerships with other members of the healthcare ecosystem. And I look forward to talking more about this over time because we do think it's going to be game-changing for the healthcare industry.
Yeah, I love how you've shaped this, as you say, very untraditional role. I love how you're being tapped for these new P&L opportunities. And I'd love to hear your thoughts too. So you're already thinking about opportunities to partner, build that ecosystem, even to commercialize some of these capabilities. So what does that look like to you, Angela?
Yes, we are planning to offer differentiating products and services to other healthcare organizations. We also plan to act as an incubator for new business offerings and as a vehicle for investments and acquisitions that fall outside of the traditional healthcare ecosystem. We want to bring resources to our physicians and our partner physicians, focusing on delivery of care through business solutions that create value for the health systems, including non-acute assets and investments as well in healthcare innovations that may be in an acute setting. And so when I say acute, for those people who are not part of the healthcare world, that means hospital-based services.
Well, and just for the record, just to remind people, you're not from this industry either. I mean, you have a multi-industry background, which we'll get into that a little bit later. But when you were talking about some of the different roles or accountabilities, you kind of went by it kind of quickly, but I want to double click on the Novant Health Innovation Lab. You're leading the charge on that. Very exciting. I mean, did you not have enough going on, Angela? I mean, that's... But tell us about that, and why we as patients will be excited to hear about that.
Now, I don't have challenges because I have a superstar team over here, Dan.
You do indeed.
And, certainly our executive director of the innovation labs, one of our hotshot VPs, established a number of unconventional partnerships and worked with a variety of funders to make this happen. She made it look easy, but of course it took the support of so many people to bring this to fruition. The labs are going to serve a number of purposes. So our first location is next to a makerspace for ease of prototyping, and it's going to facilitate engagement opportunities with our clinicians and team members, many of whom are individual inventors, as well as community members who want to pressure test an idea or co-create something with us to benefit the health and wellness of our patients. The lab is also going to showcase the latest products we're using in both clinical and non-clinical capacities, and will act as an extension of our community outreach program. So for example, if you were to walk through it today, you'll see an AR VR pod where you can try several of the headsets that we have deployed across many types of facilities that we use for training purposes and pain management. And in the pediatrics hospital, we use it to show children what an MRI experience will look like before they have to go through it. And so you'll get to see a lot of that work in the lab. You'll see a 3D printer where we can print a replica of your actual heart. We'll see the hospital room of the future. So you can imagine a space that will engage the community so they can touch and feel some of these cool innovations. We even have our friends from Zipline sent one of their drones. So it's hanging from the ceiling on display, sort of like a miniature Air and Space Museum exhibit. But you can see the drones that they took the first flight in the United States for any industry, any company across populated areas in an out of line of sight. It was the first waiver the FAA gave, and they gave it to Novant Health, not to anyone else. And you'll see one of the original drones. So we'll have labs in all the regions we serve eventually. And we're even planning a mobile lab that can circulate between some of our more rural communities so that these sorts of accelerating services where we help ideas come to life will be available to the team members and community members in our harder to reach rural areas as well.
Yeah, I love how you've changed the narrative here. This is where our industry has come from and where we're going. And, I've got a podcast coming up with three former CIOs who are now on public boards. So it's from the boiler room to the boardroom. And you and I have talked a lot about the work we've done, the research we've done around the maturity curve, right? And how does IT show up? How does digital show up? And that comfort zone of the order taker, right? We've got to bust through that. We've got to become that trusted advisor at the table, influencing. And then the stage that's aspirational for many that you're operating at is this whole notion of innovative anticipator. You're there. You've built this organization. You've tuned this organization to do that, to envision it, to execute on. I want to point that out to our guests because it's really inspiring for us to hear these stories, Angela. And you and I have a lot of fun talking about that research and how you're building that mindset and culture and muscle there.
Yes, and of course, we've been very pleased that you and your organization have engaged, have leaned in to some of the work we're trying to do. And Dan, whenever we see, in my experience, when we've seen organizations across a variety of industries that are experiencing disruption, looking at the old problems with new eyes and addressing the preparations for many possible futures in ways that maybe haven't been tried before, but make a whole lot of sense. You're typically somewhere in the mix. You can be seen adjacent to a lot of that work happening, and I don't think that's coincidental. So those kind words certainly mean a lot coming from you. So I appreciate your comments.
Yeah, thank you. I've got the best job in the world, Angela. I tell you, I'm very fortunate. It's interesting. One of the ways we unpack the stories of the best leaders, because you're so darn humble and it's hard to pull stuff out of you all. But, we have this couple of things we do. One is the isms, the expressions, the Angela-isms. There's so many that you have when you're communicating, leading, teaching. One that I think people might find surprising, which I find fascinating, is I hate the big reveal. So being this big innovator, but why do you hate the big reveal?
Well, whoever told you that is spot on. Okay, so in the solutions world, it's long been understood that iterative design and development produces a better quality product, right? So why on earth would a senior leader try to solve a particularly gnarly problem in a big bang fashion? Why would they not build in checkpoints throughout the process in which they pressure test assumptions about the context in which they're operating, or assumptions about the constraints that may or may not be artificial in nature, or even about the problem itself? If they check in periodically with me or with whomever chartered the activity, then they'll be much more likely to emerge with a solution that is exactly what had been desired and eliminate the risk of having misunderstood the ask, or having been given erroneous information to start, or worse, having solved the wrong problem. But so I do expect that. I'd like to see the sausage made a little bit, but I think it's important to balance that expectation, because having this expectation requires a culture of trust where questions are okay, uncertainty is okay. Nobody is punished for asking for clarification or for consultation. It's important that we have a collective philosophy in which nobody is expected to be perfect, but everybody is expected to learn, to grow, to help lift those around them for the greater good. If we haven't built that sort of supportive culture in which it's acceptable to pressure test ideas with colleagues, then we cannot expect anyone to bring something forward unless it's absolutely fully baked. So that expectation of mine comes with a responsibility to create a culture that encourages that degree of openness.
Yeah, you focus a lot on culture and the people side of the equation, and your team, you're able to bring these amazing people together, and I always appreciate how together you focus on the mission, you focus on the customer, in your case the patient. You actually fix people, right? There's not a lot of politic going on there in your team, and your folks really appreciate it, and that's how you're able to build this dream team. But I mean, where did you learn that? I mean, in your journey, I mean, when did you learn the importance of building that kind of culture?
I've had the good fortune of being a member of many high performing teams in my past, throughout my career. And I've had an opportunity to see some extraordinary leaders in action. And one of the things that I've noticed, and by the way, this observation precedes my experience in the professional world and goes back into my undergraduate days as a musician. What I've noticed is that people who are absolutely on top of their game, people who are the best of the best in the world in some cases at what they do, are the lifelong learners. These are people who are constantly seeking to understand. If they hear a perspective that doesn't jive with their own, rather than attacking that perspective and say, well, I don't understand how you can think that, it's more about, tell me more about that. Help me understand your perspective. Maybe there's something I'm missing. Maybe I'm about to learn something. And I've seen these brilliant, amazing, accomplished people lean into the conversation with great curiosity and intensity, striving to understand something that maybe they didn't fully understand. And more often than not, no, they understood. But they weren't afraid to ask the question. And it's that, they modeled a behavior that I've attempted to adopt. And that is, one in which I want to be part of the conversation. I certainly don't want to hold up progress, and I certainly don't want to act like a bottleneck. It's not reasonable to expect that I will be part of 99% of the solutioning that happens around me. But for those things that are just extraordinarily high priority, critical functions that, to your point, directly benefit the health and wellness of our patients and communities. Those are the things where I also want to make sure that we're not missing anything, that I haven't missed anything, and that we're making all the right optimization decisions along the way. So I try to model the behavior that was modeled for me before my career even began, and then subsequently over the intervening decades.
So I just learned something new today. We've spent a lot of time together. Musician, another part of your story. What was your thing?
I was an undergraduate music major. I have a Bachelor of Music in Performance, and my instrument was the saxophone. And it helped me pay for college. Of course, my parents were extraordinarily proud of me and encouraged me to be as broad in my studies as I possibly could be. Tremendously supportive. You know that my parents are both academics, and so music was just one more piece of what a well-rounded student should have in his or her life. So I always had a second major. I started as a second major in math, and then I switched to economics, and then I switched to general business, and then I switched back to math. And at some point I decided maybe I should just get out of school instead of pursuing a second degree. And then of course my graduate degree is in computer science from the University of Tennessee. And that's in line with my early coding days from back when I was 10, 11, and my dad was teaching me how to sling some BASIC. So
I love it. The many talents of Angela Yochem always coming out, always new. Angela, one of the other techniques I like to use on the show to learn about our guest is through our mystery questioner, like our audience questioner, somebody who knows you well and will ask a question that will help us tease out your story. So let's listen in as she shares her question with you, and then let us know who this is, and then answer the question. So let's listen in. So, Mr. Producer, this is where Teresa's question will be played. What is one major decision you made throughout your career that is at the time didn't really seem significant, but you look back now, it really was? And is there anything you would change around your decision-making process?
Oh, that is wonderful. So first, that is my dear friend, the brilliant Teresa Payton, CEO of Fortalece, cybersecurity guru, board member, TV show host, best-selling author, most recently of Manipulated, which if you haven't read it, you should. And I'm just thrilled that she took the time out to ask me that question. So I think the decision that built everything that's strong about me professionally is also the part of my background that some people don't understand as being positive. And that is my early decision to go wherever the transformative work could be found. And this is probably due in part to when I started my career, which is as a highly sought after technical architect during the .com boom. I don't know how many of your listeners remember those days, but people were jumping jobs seemingly every year. But it allowed me to open my mind to many possibilities. And I've had an opportunity to build solutions and teams and businesses in a variety of industries in some of the largest companies in the world, always at a time when that company or industry has found itself in the midst of some sort of significant change. They were either seeking change or their change was forced upon them by some external force. And And it's this trial by fire that I've experienced time and time again, always, always shoulder to shoulder with strong executives, big thinkers, bold CEOs, solving problems that no one had solved before, finding ways to win hearts and minds, managing change through adversity. And with my colleagues, setting that company up for success in an ever-changing world. But the price I have to pay to become this sort of athletic, growth-oriented executive is one of perception. So there are communities of people who believe that if you haven't stayed 5 to 10 years at a company, you might not have a lot to offer. Now, luckily for me, they're in the minority. And so the work I've been able to do as a result is something I treasure. And it certainly is what helped me build the juice that that supercharges everything that I've had the pleasure of doing.
Yeah, fantastic question, Teresa. And I appreciate those muscles you refer to, kind of honing those muscles and the courage it takes to make those tough decisions, the criticality of those decisions that you have to make, and then having consistency, right? So your people have clarity and don't get confused. And, one of the big decisions that are taking place today for companies is around this whole notion of the omnichannel. How do we serve our customers? How we provide different channels? Shamim Mohammed from CarMax was on the show last year. He talked about how he does that for CarMax to make that car buying experience so easy and frictionless. Is that something that's even possible in healthcare, Angela?
Well, okay, this is a great question. So let's talk about omnichannel broadly first. So let's start with other industries, and then let's talk about omnichannel in healthcare.
Perfect.
Okay, so when we talk about omnichannel, we typically mean two things: maintaining transactional integrity between channels of engagement and maintaining a highly personalized, consistent experience across those channels. So this might mean being able to start a transaction in one channel and finish it in another. That's the transactional integrity part, like ordering online and picking it up in a store, or ordering an item from a showroom floor and having an item delivered to your home, or starting a banking transaction online, continuing it over the phone, and maybe finishing it in a branch or at an ATM. Transactional integrity between channels was historically difficult in these other industries because of the disjointed nature of the core systems that drove commerce and transactions on a per channel basis. So, banking, you would have a core banking system, but the point of sale system that exists inside of branches, very, very different from the online banking channel. And in fact, often owned by different business leaders, often incented differently, staffed differently. The organizational disjointedness would also reflect the underlying architecture. So for this reason, omnichannel in these other industries, because by the way, retail, same thing, very different leaders leading e-com versus leading the in-store sales. And I think that's changing now, but for many, many years, in these other industries, having an omnichannel approach usually meant a significant integration activity was required. So massive lift. Now in healthcare, it's interesting because we typically think of healthcare, as you implied in your question, as being sort of resistant to change and therefore behind the times. And that is, in many, many cases, a valid assumption. But what's interesting about healthcare is the back-end transactional system for clinical visits in most healthcare companies is already centralized. Isn't that interesting? So, whether you're seeing your physician in their office or seeing a specialist over the phone for a consult or getting an MRI in an imaging center, information about that encounter will be stored and accessible by every member of your care team immediately, including all of the bots I have crawling all over your clinical data to look for trends and predict major health events before they happen. That back-end integration problem just doesn't typically exist in healthcare, except during times immediately following a merger of health systems, for example. Now, where we as a healthcare industry drop the ball is on the other part of omnichannel. So that's making the patient and consumer engagement experience highly personalized and keeping the experience consistent across channels. Because whereas we as an industry have become expert at saving every last detail of your clinical situation, we are not good about saving every last detail of the engagements you've had with us, the customer service engagements, when you start a virtual visit from your home, and that virtual visit, may include some of the advanced sensor capability that we make available to our patients. So we can take your vitals from home and we listen to your lungs. And, we hear something, say, that is somewhat alarming. We might say, I think you should go around the corner and just have somebody check you out. Now, what you would do today is you'd say, okay, thanks. I'm going to go to my nearest, Novant Health clinic. And you'd hang up, you say, thank you very much. And then you would make the appointment, probably using your online tool. And, you'd go around the corner and then you'd see that person and you'd say, hi, my name is Angela Yochem. I was just on a virtual visit and the provider, I was using one of the TytoCare devices, and the provider heard something strange in the way I was breathing and they asked me to come in and see you. And so you're starting afresh, right? The opportunity is for us to, while still on the video visit, to have that person say, you know what, I need you to see someone. There's a clinic around the corner from you. I see they have availability in 15 minutes. Are you able to get there? No, let me send a car for you. Then you send, then we partner with Lyft. So then Lyft come and pick you up, take you to the clinic. Then you walk in the clinic. Oh, Ms. Yochem, I knew you were coming. We were alerted that you were coming. You have a cough. We understand we need to take a look at your lungs. Why don't you come on back? We have a room ready for you over here. So there's a continuity of experience that, whereas transactional integrity has always been there, the experiential continuity is what's missing in healthcare. And the good news is that's just an operational lift. So I think that there's tremendous future in this, and I don't think it's in the far future. I think it's in the near future. But if you'll indulge me, just taking it back out to a broader industry perspective, generally speaking, every industry is focused on the following. And this is, by the way, these are the things that I think are most interesting to people who are in a position to make decisions about technology investments. Number one, we need to make it as easy as possible for a customer to consume a service or buy a product. And by the way, pay for it. So in healthcare, as I mentioned, it needs to be super easy to access care. The different channels by which you access care need to work together and make that experience very, very easy. You need to be able to communicate with your care team. And that care team, by the way, may not just include Novant Health affiliates. You may have a care team that includes your trainer or a nutritionist that you work with from your club or whatever. We also want to make it very easy for you to pay your bills. So
right.
We've addressed that, by the way. It's a one-click bill pay situation over here. So, and the same thing with retail. You want to make it easy. The same thing with banking. You want to make it easy. Second, we want to have a proactive engagement with our consumers. We all want to become part of their lives, part of their daily routines. And this requires some process and engagement changes across all lines of business in your company. And it also requires that you shift the mindset of the customer base. So for example, if you are in, retail consumer products, you say you manufacture running shoes. Well, then you not only want people to come to you to replace their running shoes, and you want to go beyond just reminding them, hey, it's 6 months, you need to replace your running shoes. Or in my case, it's 10 years, it's time to replace your running shoes. They don't get a lot of use. But you want to be all things running to that consumer. You want to own the running communities. You want to be able to show intersections with other runners. You want to define running for that consumer. And that is what it now means to win in the digital environment. In healthcare, we want to actively manage, we want our consumers, our patients, to actively manage their health and wellness. And we want to be a place where they can come to do that, whether or not it's reasonable to expect that all things involved in the managing of their health and wellness will be something that Novant Health owns. Just as, if you're the running shoe store, you're not going to own the roads or the experience they have while running, but you want to make sure you facilitate an amazing experience. And that's what we want to do for all aspects of health and wellness. And you want all of that to be intensely personalized and, make specialized predictions and for your consumer about what they might like next and what they should do next. And in our case, this very well, Dan, we're already predicting major health events before they happen.
Right.
We're following on from, the following on from, activity that we know our consumers have had to identify risk factors. We're combing through, 10 years of unstructured data in notes that their physician has written to try to tease out risk factors. And we're already seeing this in retail, obviously, but in healthcare, there's opportunity. And of course, in every industry, times being what they are, we have to have a ruthless attention to process improvement. And this includes virtualizing a lot of things that are manual, automating things that are manual, so that we can redirect all those overhead dollars to invest in the things that matter the most to our customers, like improving the quality of our products or services or experiences, or expanding into new markets. In our case, expanding access to care. And it's all underpinned by the advances that are happening in technology and the continued expansion of available data. And so our job is to, make our company's relative sophistication in using all of that differentiating in nature. That's the race that all of us are in.
I feel healthier just hearing that. I mean, that's very encouraging on many levels. And, and one of the ways that you get there is you've got to build the team. You've got to build the muscle in your team to be able to facilitate that. And I know when we talk about growth in the C-suite, the focus goes to revenue and all those important data, but you also think about growth in terms of people. You're very intentional about it. You walk the talk. There's only one executive right now who has 34 of her people in our leadership program, and it's you, because you're intentional. I mean, you put investment behind your people and you care. And so, one of the things that we do on the show is we are donating $125,000 in scholarships to the TechLX leadership program, 9-month cohort-based program. And the fun thing we get to do on the show is we give you the ability to gift a seat in that program to a nonprofit, an organization. You've got many that you work with and you support, but does anybody come to mind, Angela, who you think could leverage that gift?
Yes, Dan, that's a great program. Thank you for the opportunity to gift a place in TechLX. I'd like to give this to the technical director at Freedom School Partners, which is based here in Charlotte. Freedom School runs summer enrichment programs for thousands of young scholars from lower income households here in the Charlotte region. And without access to summer programs like this one, most kids lose, I believe it's 2 to 3 months of reading comprehension each summer, and are so far behind by 3rd grade that they just never catch up. And the Freedom School focuses for these young scholars on reading, strength of community, character strengths, and our scholars go on to be leaders in our community who come back and volunteer in the programs years later. So given the importance of digital engagement to these young people, it's a great time for the Freedom School to engage in TechLX. Thank you for that.
I love that. We will get them up on the website and really help to shine the light on their good work. And Angela, we're kind of running out of time here, which I'm really disappointed about, but I do want to encourage people a week from now, go to the CIO Whispers blog on CIO.com. You and I are going to continue the conversation. I'm going to write an article that'll focus on the rebranding initiative that you did, where you changed from IT to digital products and services. It's a great story. It's a great journey. Talking more about how you've changed the narrative about technology and digital, and also the 3 criteria that you use to evaluate new roles and new opportunities. And so I think that'll be very, very rich. Another path for us to go down. But Angela, thanks so much for taking time. You've got so much going on right now. I knew it would be hard to to get this on your calendar, but you made it a priority, and our audience is a beneficiary for that. So thank you again.
Thank you, Dan.